DMCC.
Whoa, you're looking a little slick back.
We're gonna build on expressway here.
Let me know what you want.
I don't need lunch anymore. It's all
Yeah, that's right, Ryan. We good here?
If you reconsider, it's probably pretty well submitted.
I get the entire side.
Somebody's got to be up there cracking the whip.
Isn't that the smart way to play these?
How are you, Doug?
Unless it's going on next door.
Looks like we have kind of a basket. This is like crazy spread out. We're expecting about 14 board members. And majority leader is called.
Second half.
Yes.
I think that's a good start.
I think RT is going to be a little late, like 5 or 10 minutes late, and
Whether it's raining.
Well, I think it's a great idea. You're absolutely smart.
so where we want to have them.
What more can I do? Let me know.
You may be right.
You can sit right by me. Yeah, well, I said there's no way you're going to get it. They're busy. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very hectic. There's a threshold. Quickly approaching the
So there's a, so that city staff is there.
I live on a river.
Consultants.
I got my two boys, they take up plenty of time. That's the sort of time I don't mind.
I just did that the other day.
So this is kind of the boards here.
Where are you? Well, I'm sitting on the street corner and then I apologize.
Michigan State, right?
What did you say? What time? I'm sitting on the corner.
Oh, that's exciting.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean,
At your house?
really didn't know.
That bad.
I'm glad I just, right
This is a
now,
bad point.
the level of gathering we're at is all the parents bring over something grilled, bring over something to drink, and the kids go over the bowls and spray each other.
Mark, are you having a hard time? It's a fun age. Are you having a hard time?
Plus, you can settle arguments with your
What are those top three letters?
Once I start being on the business end, then it's all over.
I know.
Unless you're on a boy, girl.
You do that.
Do I need to get you to sit over here?
Just go water. Gary's might not have to.
It's summertime, baby.
Oh, I miss fun bowls.
Not up here. My bar is pretty long.
Colleagues, I think I will call this informal work group meeting together. Greetings, everyone. It's like, hello, 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 hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I know that we are expecting a few more colleagues from the county board, and Mayor Ryback will be here shortly, but I thought that we should just dive in because I know there is a lot of work and conversation we want to have, we want to be able to do today. So welcome everyone, and I'm Tina Smith. I am the board chair of the Destination Medical Center Corporation, and although I think we all pretty much know each other, I thought maybe we could just start by a quick round of introductions, and we're going to go all the way around the table. So why don't we start right here?
Gary Smith, DMC EDA.
Lisa Clark, DMC EDA.
Sheila Cascade, Austin County Board of Commissioners.
Randy Staver, Rochester City Council.
Jim Beer, Olmsted County Board.
And we'll go right, oh sorry now Mayor, but we're going to go back up and let the county board chair.
Ken Brown, Olmsted County Board.
Thank you, Ken.
Ardell Brady, Mayor and DMC Board.
Mark Hickey, Rochester City Council and DMC Board.
And Mayor Ryback will be sitting here shortly, and I am Tina Smith.
Nick Campion, Rochester City Council.
Mark Tyne, Olmsted County Commissioner.
Kathleen Lamb for the Destination Medical Center Corporation.
Doug Holton, Mayo Clinic Department of Facilities.
Gary Newman, City Administrator's Office.
Patrick Sieb, DMC EDA.
Joni Giese, Coordinator for the City Loop Study.
Patrick Corkle, Street Use Coordinator.
Mona Elabadi, Transit Circulator Study.
Charlie Ryder, City County Planning Department.
Richard Fries, City Public Works.
Beth Bartz with SRF Consulting.
And code, no. And again, thank you to our audiovisual people who are helping to make this all work. Well, this, as you know, this is an informal meeting that we are having with the board members of the DMCC board, the DMC EDA, the City Council, and the Olmsted County Board, and along with all of our fantastic staff here. And this is the second of three kind of deep dives that the DMC board is doing into reviewing these transit options for the Destination Medical Center for the district. No official action will be taken today, but it gives us an opportunity, and I think a unique opportunity with all three of the boards here to really take a hard look at what are, I believe, 5 options for transportation strategy in the district. And each one of these options has some component of the kind of the core pieces that we know that we need here, which is what are we going to be doing around parking, around transit connections and modes, around a city loop, and then also around the core idea of great streets. I am not going to spend a ton of time kind of setting the table here. Beth is going to do that shortly because I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to really look at these options. I will just tell these my colleagues here, though those of you who live in Rochester know this, that there have been also opportunities for the public to weigh in on and take a look at these options. And I understand that the Rochester City Council had an opportunity to see all of this as well. Maybe I think it was on Monday. So this is not the first time all of these concepts have been put forth, and it probably will not be the last. But it gives us a really good opportunity to look at the different components, and what we hope to come out of this is a good discussion about the options. The staff has, I believe, tentatively made recommendations on 3 options, so we'll be looking at those as well. And our purpose here by the end of this meeting is to give the staff and consultants who've been working so hard on this a very specific kind of direction and feedback as we can as we have a chance to look at this. I want to just take a moment to remind us all that all of these boards have important roles to play here. So just let me touch on that for a minute. The DMCC board role is to approve projects and to make sure that those projects are consistent with the development plan that we have adopted. But the county has an extremely important role also. The county, of course, has imposed the sales tax, which is helping to pay for this. And of course, Commissioner Beers sits on our board and has a role as well. The county has a role through the commissioner in approving what ultimately we end up doing. And of course, the city has extremely important authorities for approving projects, and also serves on the DMC board. So this is kind of what the actual partnership looks like between the city and the county and the state, and of course also Mayo Clinic, which sits here and is also of course represented by the EDA board. And I just think it's important to remember that, because partnerships are complicated and important and are really kind of the underpinning of what this project is all about, as we figure out how to make targeted and strategic public investments that will attract the jobs and economic opportunity that will benefit the Destination Medical Center District, as well as all of Rochester and Olmsted County and southeastern Minnesota. So we have big goals, and we're pretty ambitious, in fact, about this project. Now, I think the way this day is going to go is that Beth is going to lead us through the day, and will give us some idea of the agenda and kind of do some level setting. But the main part of the meeting is for us to be up and walking around and looking at these scenarios and discussing with one another and with the consultants sort of what we see here and what our feedback is. And when we break into that part of the day, I want to encourage everybody to kind of mix it up a little bit so that we don't have clumps of all county or all DMC, but this is an opportunity for us to kind of talk amongst ourselves as well as have conversations with the consultants. I want the public to know that when we get up and we start to move around and look at these, you should feel free to come and listen to the conversation. And we don't probably have the capacity to have a big conversation with everybody, but I don't want you to feel like you have to sit here and just watch. Please feel free to come up as well. And I want to thank you all for being here. And then what we'll do is we will, after we finish with that, and they're going to try pretty hard to move us through so that we don't get sidetracked, then we'll reconvene at the end and have some additional conversation and discussion. But know that the conversation that happens at each one of these stations will also be recorded, so that notes will be taken so that we don't miss the feedback that happens in those places as well. And with that, I want to just as a matter of courtesy ask if any representatives from the, anybody from the county or the city or the EDA would like to just say anything before we dive right into this. Oh, yeah. Yes, Commissioner Cascaden.
I am the shyest commissioner. That my colleagues will tell you that.
Yeah. She never asks any questions.
And I never ask questions. I just want to thank you for hosting the meeting. I think that we haven't had many opportunities to sit side by side with our colleagues from the city and from the EDA to learn about these options together. And I think that this format, I'm hopeful, will help us have the kind of informal conversations we need to be the good partners moving forward as we're jointly financing these things, and as we look to what the impact will be on our community overall and on the demand for public services. So I think this is a great opportunity. I also just wanted to call out that Heidi Welsh has joined the table, and Heidi is the Deputy County Administrator, and as you know, our longtime county administrator has retired, and I think this is the first time Heidi's been to one of these gatherings, and so she doesn't know all of you yet, so please take a moment to say hello to Heidi.
Yeah, hi Heidi, thank you for joining us.
October 31st.
Very good, thank you Sheila. Well, with that, Beth, I will welcome you into this arena here.
Yes, it does feel like an arena, and for that matter, I'm going to walk up a little closer so I don't feel like I'm yelling at you across the room. So my charge for the next 15 minutes is to go through 30 slides, which is a lot of slides. So I'm going to be going through them very quickly. My goal here is to get hopefully everybody on about the same page, and we know some folks have spent a little more time with this information or have heard a few more presentations. Others might be relatively new, so we want to give you some grounding. We do want to talk to you a little bit about what we've been doing for the past 4 or 5 months here since we all had more detailed conversations in January. I want to set us up for our round robin discussion and explain a little bit about that. So here we go. I'm going to be flying fast. If you have questions, we can certainly answer them for you as we have the discussions at the stations. So just in terms of ITS background, and when I say ITS, I'm talking about the integrated transit studies. As the Lieutenant Governor just explained, we're looking at ways to integrate 4 different elements of transportation together into a comprehensive network that serves both the DMC and the community of Rochester in an efficient, integrated, high-quality way. So we're looking at transit, we're looking at parking, we're looking at pedestrians and bicyclists, and we're looking at how we use the streets to create that high-quality environment that'll make it a great place to both live and work. What we anticipate is today in the DMC district, we have about 2,800 housing units, 3.5 million square feet of retail, office space, and about 13.5 million square feet of medical facilities. With the plans for expansion of the Mayo Clinic, ancillary and related activities to that, as well as other growth in downtown. In the coming years, over the next 20 or so years, we anticipate increasing that number of housing units to about 6,500, over 5 million square feet of retail and office space, and over 23 million square feet of medically related facilities. Job growth over the next 25 years, we anticipate will almost double. So while that's very exciting from an economic development standpoint, and just from a quality of life standpoint, we also need to be looking then at our transportation systems and our streets to make sure that they continue to serve those uses well, and that we're not literally tripping over each other as we move through downtown. The DMC plan was a plan that was formulated to address those growth issues and create that high-quality environment. As part of that plan, they articulated 10 transportation principles. Members of the various boards, you have these 10 principles at each of your places in your handout. But I want to draw attention to a couple of key items. We do want to make it easy, affordable, and convenient for folks to get to downtown. We want to create a park once environment where folks can find a place for their car or get into downtown without having to use their vehicle, and then be able to circulate around downtown with a variety of other modes. We want to increase that workforce, that share of the workforce that's coming to downtown via transit to about 30%. Again, and to create a parking environment where they can be more at the perimeter of downtown to free up some of that interior space for patients, visitors, folks who are coming to use the downtown facilities. We do, however, want to create a world-class system, so streets that are made for people, so that this is not a downtown that is dominated by cars, but is a pleasant place to be, easy to move around, and is seen by other communities as being a top-notch community. So the 4 ITS studies, we talk about them as a group. We do have 4 consultant teams who are working in each of these areas. We have folks who are working on parking, folks who are working on transit strategies. We have another group that's looking at developing an iconic city trail, which we're calling the City Loop, which can be used for recreational but also commuter purposes, and serve that, in addition to just transportation, serving as an element of health in the community, both health in terms of recreation, but also mental health, mental respite, and also can be that high quality amenity that's going to attract jobs and growth in downtown. And then also looking at our streets. How are we using our streets to move people and, again, be that high quality environment? So 4 ITS studies for 4 consultant teams. As we look at each of these studies, we're looking at balancing those 30,000 new jobs, the parking demand that's going to come not only with the job growth, but also patients and visitors to the places that are employing those folks. We've got 3 distinct transit markets that we're anticipating for downtown. We've got the transit market that's focused on employees, the commuter traffic. We also have the group of folks who are moving through downtown, which we were just talking about, the patients and visitors. They need to move between various places in downtown. And then the Mayo employees themselves also move throughout the course of their day between different Mayo facilities. So they also have a distinct transit market. 3 transit markets, use of the right-of-way, last mile solutions. So that last mile in transit speak is always once you get to your bus stop or your transit station, and then you have to make that final journey to your ultimate destination. We want that to be an easy transfer to whether you're biking, shared car facilities, you're walking. How do you get from that last station to your ultimate destination? And limited portal capacity. What we know right now in downtown is that we are seeing some traffic congestion at the entry points, the portals into downtown. If you're someone who comes into downtown via Civic Center Drive regularly about 8 o'clock in the morning, you've experienced that backup. You've seen it at 2nd Street as well. So we know that we have some constraints. We're looking at all those things in a balanced way, also trying to address mobility, economic development, and access into downtown. In terms of our overall schedule, we are trying to complete these 4 studies by the end of 2017. What you can see grayed out there is the milestones that we've accomplished up until this time. The other element that I will point out to you, oh, I do have a pointer that reaches that far, is in September of 2017, we have another set of milestones. And at that particular point in time, we're going to be coming to the various boards that are represented here today to help us select one preferred concept for parking, for transit, et cetera, that will then go into further design development, and we'll start to look for financing, et cetera, pull together some strategies for implementation. So today we're going to be talking about narrowing a broader field to 3. We'll spend more time, more detailed study on those 3 over the course of the summer. And then this fall, we're going to be coming back to you with more information and asking you to help us select one alternative that is the best fit for Rochester. So what have we learned to date? What have we been doing over the last couple of months? As I said before, we have those portal capacity constraints, so we've been looking at the remaining capacity at those key entry points into downtown. The orange you see on this map is how much capacity is left. And you can see here at Civic Center Drive, 2nd Street, 6th Street, this actually represents 15-minute increments over a peak hour-and-a-half period. We've actually got very little orange left in some of these places. We have a lot more orange over on the east side of downtown. That helps us to understand what are the existing traffic patterns. We've also started to look at land uses in the future and how do we anticipate that demand for travel is going to increase with not only 30,000 new jobs in downtown, but also more patients, more visitors, more residents in the city of Rochester. We are also looking at existing parking in downtown. We have developed a Park Plus model that helps us now understand where the parking is located. It's a GIS-based model, but also at what times of the day is that parking in high demand? When is it available? Who's using that parking? Is it employees? Is it visitors, et cetera? This is just one screenshot of that model looking at current utilization. What you can see in this map is there's a lot of red, meaning at the peak periods in downtown, we're using a lot of our existing parking capacity and we need to be looking for more. We are also looking at sites, maybe at the perimeter of downtown, where we can place some additional large banks of parking, particularly for employees, looking at the suitability of those sites. Can you get to that site? How many parking spaces could you put at that site? What are the opportunities there for mixing together not only park and riders and transit, but also bike share facilities, car share facilities, et cetera, so they can really be the focal points of interaction between different transportation modes. We've been looking at 6 sites, which you can generally see here on the map. What we found is sites are all feasible. The various site capacity ranges from about 1,000 cars to 7,500. We can get about 27,000 parking spaces if we utilized all these sites. Good news is that's much more than what we anticipate we have demand for, so we can focus down on the areas that make the most sense. We're also looking at integrating the concept of mobility hubs at these areas, not only those locations where we can transfer from one means of transportation to another, but we can also incorporate housing or be incorporating some of those daily needs, dry cleaning, daycare, et cetera, into some of these facilities so that they really become a convenient location for downtown employees and visitors. Travel demand management, we've also had some meetings with members of the community. We've been talking about strategies to look at ways that we can use our parking more efficiently by maybe shifting employment times around a bit, starting a bit earlier, starting a bit later, distributing that income and outflow of employee traffic throughout the day so we can better utilize our street system. Looking at strategies for pricing parking so that we can make sure we're reserving parking close to Mayo and retail facilities for visitors and patients, et cetera. So you'll be hearing a lot more about travel demand in the coming months. We've been looking at the city loop scenarios, refining our plans for where the city loop, and that's again that iconic ped bike facility, should be located. So we can serve folks both who live within the community, who are traveling into downtown, do that in a way that's accessible for those with mobility restrictions, and looking at different options for locating that. We've also been, sorry about that. We've also been looking at our streets and how much can we physically fit into our streets with these various transit modes, parking, city loop, et cetera, and just doing some initial looks at how do we want to allocate that right away. So there's been a lot of work that's been done in each of those areas by the consultant teams. We don't have time today, unfortunately, to run you through all that, but just wanted to let you know there's a lot of that analysis that's going on. So I'm going to turn our attention now to the scenarios that we've been referring to throughout the introduction to this meeting. As I said earlier, we have 3 downtown transit markets that we are trying to serve. When we spoke with many of you board members in January, we had many different modes of transit, that is, many types of transit that we were looking at, and many different routes. Since that time, we've focused things down a bit. In terms of the transit modes, we've narrowed it down to 4 different transit modes. One would be bus rapid transit, which differs from regular bus service in that it's really focused on moving people very quickly and very efficiently using a bus system. These are usually enhanced buses that allow for level boarding and multiple doors on the buses, so similar to light rail transit that you might see in the Twin Cities. You can get lots of folks on and off of these buses very quickly. They're very comfortable, many of them are Wi-Fi enabled, so definitely a very high class of bus service. We're also looking at trams, which is essentially, again, similar to LRT, but typically a single car, not a group of 3 cars grouped together, and more of a system that can also run in mixed traffic as opposed to just being on its own isolated set of rails. Automated Guideway Transit, or AGT, is an elevated form of transit that we've been looking at. You might be most familiar with AGT types as monorail type services. So they are very quiet, they run with particular specific propulsion systems, that's where I was going for, on these monorail systems. We've also been looking at elevated forms of autonomous vehicles, and you've probably heard a lot about autonomous vehicles in the news. It's an emerging technology. We have been looking at it in terms of an elevated roadway on which these autonomous vehicles could move and help get people through the city. So 4 modes. We've been looking at where our connection priorities are, where do we want to get people to. And again, you will see those parking locations highlighted here with the orange circles, but also some of the key downtown destinations that are focuses of activity. St. Mary's Place, heart of the city, Discovery Square, University of Rochester, the Civic Center area. So you can think about these, the dots on the map that we've been wanting to connect with, looking at transit services. We also have some areas that we know we want to maybe avoid or tread very lightly on. We've got a lot of neighborhoods that are close into downtown that are represented by these blue circles. And we've got, again, our congested portals here, which we've highlighted here in red. Those are areas that we know we have some concerns and we just want to be very cautious of. So these integrated study scenarios, they are not true alternatives, but rather ways of organizing some of our variables so that we can look at different ways that we can connect parking with various transit alternatives. We can complement those with bike and pedestrian facilities, and together they represent a complete network. We have 5 of these scenarios that we're going to show you today, and we've recommended 3 of those that would move forward into more detailed study. So a scenario versus an alternative. The scenarios will maintain a degree of being able to mix and match these as we move forward. So as you look today, you'll see that each of the scenarios will represent a transit mode, there will be a route, there will be other elements that are connected with that in terms of the parking functions. We'll talk with you about each of these at the stations. But as we go through this process over the next coming months, if we find we like the transit mode from scenario A, but we really like the route from scenario D, we can still mix and match those things a bit. So the scenarios are more of a way of studying these various options rather than saying discretely we have to pick one in whole. So we've got greater flexibility in our study process than we would be if we were looking at discrete alternatives. As I said, each of these scenarios defines a parking transit circulator relationship. It has an alignment relative to those key destinations. We're looking at how many transfers throughout the system one would experience if you were parking at one of the remote areas where your key destinations are. We're thinking about those last mile connection needs, and then also looking at how the city loop alternatives would interrelate with those scenarios. Again, we're going to go through each of these 5 scenarios at the stations, so just running through them very quickly so you know what we're referring to. DMC modified, this would be a tram, it's at grade, it has both north-south and east-west components. And I believe the way that these are organized at the station is we're starting in this corner with DMC modified, and then we're moving along in this direction toward the front of the room. Scenario A is a BRT scenario. You can see that this one also has an east-west routing element on 2nd. We have a mobility hub that we've identified up here and at the 1452 interchange area, and it uses 11th Avenue in this particular segment. Scenario B is also a BRT scenario, but it has more of a north-south orientation overall in its routing. In addition, because when you move north-south, you don't really have a good connection then between the downtown Mayo facilities and St. Mary's. This option has a subterranean tunnel with autonomous vehicles in it to help make that connection for Mayo employees. Scenario C is an elevated option that could use either AGT or autonomous vehicles. It actually has an A line or a B line, so 2 sort of back-to-back C shapes where perhaps the A line would start here and it would go in this direction out to St. Mary's and back, and the B line would start in that same location but then swing to the east over towards Civic Center and back. There would be one opportunity to maybe switch back and forth between those lines at this area, but it's a much more complicated service plan. And then last but not least, scenario D would also be an elevated option. This one is a little more east-west oriented and takes a bit of a different route than what we saw before. So we'll have some time for you all to ask questions and also look at our evaluation criteria for each of these at the various stations. So this is the transit evaluation matrix as a whole. Again, you have a copy of this at your place along with maps of each of these scenarios. So if you want to take notes as we go through the various stations, you can do so. And with that, it is time to break up and have our discussions. At each station, we will have one of the study coordinators there to help explain the scenario. We have someone available who will record comments. We are going to take a few more minutes at the first station just so you can get oriented to the legend and understand what you're looking at. And then subsequently to that, we are going to have Pat. Where's Pat? Pat's right behind me here. We do call Pat the human megaphone because he has a very loud voice. And he will be telling us when it's time to move from one station to the next. I think we have about 14 of you here. I'm counting 3, 3, 3, 3, 2. About 14. So we're going to recommend that you organize yourselves in groups of 2 to 3, that we try to mix it up a little bit, that maybe members of the DMC board might pair themselves up with a city council member or a county board member or EDA board member, just so we can hear that diversity of discussion at each of the stations. So with that, I will invite you to all stand up and move to one of the 5 stations, and then we'll just rotate in what would this be? A counterclockwise circle as time is up.
Right. And colleagues, we have about an hour to do this. So just so you'll know that's what we're moving towards.
So I'm gonna follow it. Just follow it with the camera. So I need I figured the black cameras right here because they're
Check.
yeah. So turn up these mics and make sure that
Check.
yeah,
You guys in a group or?
Oh, okay. Follow you.
Okay.
Since you're the main
Yeah.
person, and then as you go from
Okay.
group.
All right, good.
Okay, so this is,
Hi, Grace. Okay.
Beth explained, this is all elevated. She referred to it as a reverse C originally. So we have a train that comes this way, elevated, same monorail, it serves St. Mary's, it comes through downtown. We have another one that operates on a separate track.
Where does the elevated start in this scenario?
Okay,
Right
it
here.
starts here.
Uh-huh.
Yep. And in the future, we look at it, we should expand in this direction.
Uh-huh.
And so again, it's 2 separate trains. It would be a transfer here in the vicinity of Discovery Square. If you parked here, for example, and you wanted to go to St. Mary's, it could be a transfer.
Could this, and as I'm I don't think this is this on? I don't know if it's on. Yeah. Oh, I got it. Okay. So this is we call this a scenario and not an alternative because this same scenario could work regardless of whether it was elevated. Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. Mm-hmm.
specimens up. She spent specimens where some aren't supposed to be spun. So.
That would be on the city street.
Yes. And then the purple is the city road.
Okay.
So those colors.
Mm-hmm. 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 Right. So this is not even half a mile, right? That's about half a mile like that. Okay. Okay. And is this one of the recommended alternatives? Okay. Okay. And why is this not recommended? That's because it's elevated, right? What do you like about this option? I mean, let's say because you said it doesn't rely on this. You don't. It wouldn't have to be elevated, or it wouldn't have to. Well, is there anything about this that you like if you were to take away the elevated part of it, which is what's driving cost, right? I mean, what about the idea that you have like an A line and a B line? That seems to me to get at the challenges of Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right, I see. And if this is this is not even a mile, or barely a mile and a half, yet you have to transfer halfway through. Right. Okay.
What I like about it, I think the fact that we look at something that's elevated.
Mm-hmm. 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 So the strength is that you got some of that off of the street. The streets aren't going to be so congested, but the weakness is that it's very expensive to do that.
So,
Mm-hmm.
again, from a walking perspective, biking, the use of the city streets for automobiles and pedestrians,
Mm-hmm.
it does not encroach as much
Mm-hmm.
Into those areas as.
And you also have this big, I mean, this is a highly congested, almost at capacity
Yes.
Piece of the...
You'll see these areas repeat themselves in almost every scenario. These are opportunities, and I think there were 6 dots on the overhead. This peripheral, remote scenario of running east of Broadway and along north side of Civic Center Drive is repeated in almost every one of the scenarios.
I remember the last time we talked about this, we talked about how if you wanted to get to St. Mary's, if you worked at St. Mary's, say, or someplace over here, and you're parking here, you've got to go all the way around. And that seems to me to be another, kind of weakness of this.
This alternative is, it may be one of the best alternatives for moving one of our markets, and that's the employee market early morning, late afternoon. But the ridership during the day, whether it's the intercampus travel for patients and employees, or whether it's the circulation downtown, the ridership is a lot lower, per trip of the, per time the train comes. We will have the trains full in the morning and the evening for employees going back and forth to their parking areas. But during the day, it's an expensive system to operate based on the ridership. So that's one of the downfalls.
I just can't imagine that doing an elevated option is going to allow us to deliver something with the resources that we have at the time. I'm actually sort of surprised that the cost is not like
Right now, we haven't prioritized these to the point that if you were to put a high value as far as priority on cost, this might fall out, but we haven't chose to do that yet. We really wanted to look at the mode, we wanted to look at the alignment, we wanted to look at the markets that we serve before we eliminate anything for cost purposes. But we did want to identify some relative relationship between costs, particularly as it relates to looking at these two different mode types for the similar thing. And you can see one is about maybe 60% of the cost of the other.
How far out is the autonomous vehicle option in terms of technology being available?
It's in use currently in San Francisco on a test market basis. The evolution, I think, is more advanced in the cars right now, in personal vehicles, than it is in buses. But there are 3 bus companies that I'm aware of that are manufacturing the vehicles like we saw in the on the slides, which are more 10 to 12 passenger vehicles. But it's just a matter of time before that vehicle size will grow to 20, and then 30, and maybe 35 to more replicate the size of a bus. A lot of that's going to be driven by battery capacity. And as a society, it amazes me we haven't figured out how to build, manufacture batteries that have a long life to them. But we're getting there. Buses are, regular bus coaches are now starting to use that technology. I would say within 5 years we could have these, in operation on a limited basis. And maybe what they represent is they represent serving one of the markets more efficiently than they do all of the markets. One of the downsides of the autonomous vehicle right now is you can only put 10 to 12 people in a vehicle versus in a bus you can put 30 to 40. In the tram you can put 30 to 40, those type of things. So again, that AM and PM employee movement is probably the downfall right now of autonomous vehicle. But that technology will evolve, and I think by the time we're ready to implement something at a full scale, that bigger vehicle will be available to us.
Okay. Do you guys have other questions?
I know that the tram isn't my station here, but I think the same thing will happen with the tram. I find it hard that this community will accept a catenary system of wires above and running through downtown. But I think within 10 years, the system, in fact, right now there are some systems that run on it and then off of it. And they charge while they're on and they operate while they're off. I would think in 10 years we're going to have tram systems that operate basically primarily on battery or have the ability to recharge as they're going along.
Right. I mean, I think the challenge, we have to figure out how to do this in a way that can adapt to that rather than tying us into something that isn't going to be flexible.
So again, without letting the cat out of the bag, if you will, I think you're right on, because there's going to be an evolution here.
Right.
We're going to, in all likelihood, start out with a bus because it's readily available. We're used to it. People are used to riding it. That will evolve to something else. So how important is it we pick the right corridor and the right level to operate it at?
Right.
And so I think it's, again, not jumping ahead until September or November.
Yeah, no, that's kind of where I am too.
That's kind of where we're going to be at.
Yeah.
Let's let's make sure that if we pick a
All right,
corridor,
everybody, time.
if we pick a corridor,
Good loud voice. That's excellent. Well done.
you could be a speaker.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for all your work.
Thank you.
So right now, the number of stations probably 1,
Yep.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, something in that range.
We're moving.
Yep.
Okay.
It's just me. Nobody wants to be with me, apparently, so that's good.
We'll just have a nice conversation.
Right.
we just
Kayla's
spent-
with me.
We just spent a lot of time talking about where we would put parking here, which, and I'm not sure was the best use of it.
Well, you know, that's the thing about a local elected person is that they know that the devil is in the details, and it's all, you know. Now, me, I'm a much bigger, you know, like I can't get into the details because I don't know enough to be in the details. So, okay, so this option is,
It's an elevated, primarily elevated.
yeah.
Jody, you want to talk about the legend here?
Or did you get an introduction to the legend?
Yep, I have an introduction to the legend, and so this is the transit line here. So it basically goes back and forth, and this is the loop, existing bus service, the sub-districts, and okay.
So this one starts at grade. The idea is that it
Mm-hmm.
actually starts at grade up here to pick up the parking, get underneath 52, and then at this point here, it then elevates up over Civic Center and then stays elevated for the rest of the route.
Right, so but even though it's at grade, the automated guideway transit, which is like you see at airports, that has to be on, even though it's at grade, it's not running in the street, it's running in a very exclusive guideway. It's designed specifically for that type of a vehicle. Whereas the autonomous vehicle, for instance, it could actually run, or you could just be running on pavement, you wouldn't need any kind of a guideway. But then
It's like a dedicated busway, except
yes,
it's dedicated.
Yes, well, what we're showing in blue would be dedicated, but the beauty of autonomous vehicles is, getting the cart in front of the horse here a little bit, but the autonomous vehicles would not be limited to the guideway. You could have, like when I came in from the airport today, I could have gotten on an autonomous vehicle and it would have brought me up and there'd be a ramp someplace here and it comes up and puts me on the elevated system so I'm not caught up in local traffic. But basically, this would be the high performing part of the system, but with an autonomous vehicle, it could be coming from anywhere.
How contingent is this route to being elevated? Meaning, could this route work if it weren't elevated?
Except for the part where we're going through a building.
Yeah, right.
Other than that, yes, it could. In fact, when you hear, I don't know, the people at the BRT options, I don't know if they're talking about this, but we're really thinking BRT autonomous vehicles. So I mean, the nature of the business is shifting towards autonomous vehicles. So when we design those options, the BRT options in detail, we'll be thinking about how do we design them in such a way to take advantage of new autonomous vehicle technology. Of course, those are all at-grade options. So the main difference here, we'd probably just come down to fourth. Although if this were not elevated, then we'd have to be probably running on 34th, or we'd have to have 2 lanes on fourth.
So in this scenario, this is elevated above second.
Yes.
And if it were, right.
Yeah, so right now, it's showing this as an elevated speed. But I think as we were talking about, that if someone really loves this alignment, but doesn't like the idea that it's elevated, then we'll look it back and try to figure out, maybe this wants to be this alignment, but use BRT. That's kind of where we're flushing through all those scenarios.
And so STAR means that this is one of the staff is currently recommending this.
Right.
Yes.
The autonomous vehicle version, not the automated guideway transit. Yeah.
And what are the primary reasons that you recommend this option?
Well, first of all, we're recommending it over the so-called AGT option because it's not a proprietary vehicle, which is a real pain. I could spend a lot of time talking about that. It's less expensive to build. It's less expensive to operate.
Oh, you don't have the, oh, here it is, this is. There we go, yep.
So it's a lot, the ability to extend service, as I mentioned, you don't even have to have a guideway in the autonomous vehicles. As long as you have a ramp, a controlled access ramp, they can run anywhere and come in and get on the system. The capital cost is 160 million to 260 for the autonomous vehicles is considerably lower. In fact, I think that might even be a little bit on the high side because, again, this is just, nobody's built one of these. Jacksonville has an AGT project that they are converting it to autonomous vehicles, but they're just starting to do that right now, so we don't know what it will actually cost. So basically, it's pretty straightforward that if you're going to build something elevated, autonomous vehicle is a quantum leap better than automated system. The trade-off of elevated versus at grade, it's more expensive to be elevated. It costs more. The advantage is you're not tied up in local traffic, so you have both a higher speed and you have a higher reliability. So it's one of those things where there is no perfect answer. You've got to decide, is it worth paying for the higher level of service?
So those, I mean, I realize those are super rough numbers, but on that 160 and 260 assumes elevated.
Yes. Well, as Joni was mentioning, this part is not elevated, but it's still an exclusive guideway.
Once it gets.
Yes.
Yeah.
And these are extremely round numbers. The next phase of work, which is the next couple of months, that's where we're digging into more details in terms of the numbers will have fewer zeros on the end, so they'll be a little more specific.
One of them, not to Richard mentioned it to you, one of the other things about this route that makes it favorable is that it is a nice connection from parking to St. Mary's and to the other mail facilities, hits the University of Rochester, and also connected to Sunset. So it really touches a lot of the destinations in a very convenient manner.
Right. We talked about how rather than come this way if you want to go to St. Mary's, and I'm not familiar enough to know
So
what
this is
happens
16th,
here.
And so this is like where the Miracle
So that's where
Mile
Miracle Mile is. So it kind of runs
Yeah.
behind Miracle
Runs
Mile.
right behind it. And once again, it's kind of maybe also an impetus for redevelopment on that side as well.
One of the other BRT options comes down to 11th, cuts across, so it kind of touches the corner of St. Mary's. You could actually do the same thing with this option.
What worries you the most about this option?
In terms of it as an autonomous vehicle system, I would say it's a very small worry. The small worry is we don't know how the technology is developing. At the same time, in the Wall Street Journal this morning, there were 3 articles on autonomous vehicles. So it's not like it's a technology that's just wouldn't it be interesting in this? I mean, Google and Microsoft, BMW and Chevrolet, I mean, they are pouring money into autonomous vehicles, and they're going to happen. Right now, the big issue right now is what are they going to look like? And
How far out do you think it is?
in terms of transit or cars?
In terms, I mean, like,
If we wanted to do
when would we
this,
be building this? I mean,
I
putting
don't-
aside our local
Yes.
constraints, when would the technology be available to be on the ground? Is your best
the
guess?
technology is being tested. There are people right now in Florida and in Southern California. Okay, I guess that makes me think a little bit more about it. Responding to your issue, what worries me, worry isn't quite the right word, but I think something we would have to look at here that you don't have in Southern California or Florida is snow. What's happening with the autonomous vehicles is they drive so precisely that they start, I mean, they're forming ruts in the road because it's not like a car where we're kind of all over the 12-foot lane. They are very precise, which makes me think we could build the guideway, make it graded, except for the 2 narrow paths where the wheels run. You don't want the whole thing to be graded because it's noisy, but if most of it were graded, the snow would just fall right through, and it wouldn't be an issue. Part of the cost that we've got built into here is so that the guideway is big enough you could drive a snowplow. So I don't think we're going to need a snowplow, which means we can make it smaller and cheaper. But again, it's a lot of speculation.
All right, I gotta go. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Moving along. Yeah, all right, here we go. Get to move on. I know. Okay. Who am I going over here? I don't know.
This is all a result of parking. This is actually the city. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Tina.
So,
Hey, Charlie.
are you by yourself?
I am. I'm by myself. Well, these guys are coming with me. Yes.
I'm getting out of the side.
There we go. How's that? Okay.
So what we have here is basically the DMC plan.
Okay. This is the modified plan. Mm-hmm.
Modifications were due mostly because of parking that's gone away
Mm-hmm.
from development. So, you know, in the DMC plan, there was a big parking reservoir here where we now have development. There was parking out here along 52, which because of capacity problems we can't serve. So that was the reason for making the modifications.
Okay.
So the streetcar-based system serves both east, west, and north, south. So the DMC plan sort of
Is this one continuous loop? I can't remember. Yeah. Okay. So it goes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, there would be sort of once, actually, I don't remember the exact, I mean, obviously the loop isn't closed here. So
Right.
Back this way.
Okay. Uh-huh. But it runs on two streets here.
It could run on two, or it could be just on one.
Okay.
And that would depend in part on, are you going to dedicate lanes to it or not? So and that's as well a question, you know, with Second Street. Will it be dedicated lanes, or will it be in mixed traffic? So that'll be part of the evaluation.
Charlie, is and Mitzi, is the city loop route pretty much the same on all of these? Or I'm trying to assess the differences in the.
So there's core pieces that are the same. The differences are really on the west end.
Okay.
So 11th Avenue, 12th Avenue,
Mm-hmm.
and I think 9th Avenue.
Are the. Mm-hmm.
So one of the questions there was, where do you access, you know, where's the front door of St. Mary's?
Right.
And do you sort of set that up to be in the future at St. Mary's Place, or do you take it further west so it's more aligned with the current front door, so to speak? So that's different there. It's a little bit different up here, but pretty much the same.
This one goes kind of around the outside of Civic Center.
Right.
Right.
And one kind of follows actually what was suggested in the DMC plan of going down the railroad corridor, kind of repurposing that railroad corridor. And then actually here it changed a little bit because it used to go through the neighborhood a little bit here. But there's actually grade issues and it's not ADA accessible grade. So it was brought over to 4th Avenue.
So what are the primary reasons that the staff is recommending this option?
So we
For
want to
further-
have a rail-based option to be able to compare. We want to have an option that looks at both, that has both an east-west and a north-south. All the other options are one or the other. Because by having both, you're really hitting both kind of Mayo's intensity of development, which is going to extend in both directions along 34th. Plus, you're hitting St. Mary's. What we've heard from Mayo staff is really trying to get better access. You know, if we're going to set up a system, let's have good access to St. Mary's. That's one of the biggest needs that they see right now, is that their access for, you know, not for the people that are driving there, but anybody who's taking some kind of transit is really not as good as it is downtown. So it's trying to do that. One thing about this, so you can see the cost here. It's up there. Second most expensive next to the elevated system. So that's an issue, and in part because of that cost, we don't show another extension going down to these parking fairgrounds or Kmart. So that would just drive that up, and we made the decision to extend the system this way to get to this field, because this is where we have the ability
Right.
to do by far the largest amount of parking.
Right. When you think about people that are coming